6.3, Finding Harmony. This is a bit of a workspace area. In here, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Can I? Turn read mode off so we can zoom in a little bit. Here we go. So here we just have an explainer. What is a C major chord? So the root is the note on which the chord is built. So this is a C major chord. Major is the quality. Another quality would be minor, for example. The bass note is always the lowest note in the chord. Chords are always written vertically like this. The root is the, as we said, the sort of name note of the chord. So in this case, the root is the same as the bass. It's C. And we have our third, that's E, and we have our fifth, that's G, and it sounds like this. String players, we can't really play chords as easily as the same way a keyboard player could. And as such, we spend a lot of time developing really beautiful melodies. However, I think there is a lacking in, at least there was in my training, how to understand how the melodies function within the context of the harmonies that you're playing. So every piece has harmonies happening, especially if you're playing a sonata or a concerto. And a lot of us don't take the time to understand those harmonies, and I think that this etude will help with that. So it just goes on to explain how, if you take the C and you flip it up an octave, it now looks like this. The bass is still the lowest note, but the root has been put in the top note. So the bass is no longer the root, it's the third, followed by the fifth and the root on top of that. So now it sounds like this. Slightly different sound, same harmony, still C major. In popular music and jazz notation, oftentimes you'll see a slash with another letter after that. This indicates the bass note. So you've got the name of the chord here, C, and then you've got the bass note. What is the lowest note? Well, it's E, so that's why it's /E. This is really more important for the people supplying the bass roll, an actual bass, double bass, or maybe piano. String players probably don't need to know that, but it can be really helpful to read because what's in the bass will affect the sound of the chord. And so here we have this exact same thing, but in the minor quality. So everything is now E flat in all the chords. So this is just explainers. This is just shows you what a C major seventh chord is. It's a C major chord plus a seventh above the root. What do I mean by seventh? It's an interval. So if the root is 0, if the root is 1, then above that would be 2, that's a D. Above that would be E, that's a third. Above that is F, that's a fourth. Above that is G, that's a fifth, and so on. Generally, Western harmony makes chords by stacking thirds. So you get a seventh when you stack a third on top of the fifth. And all of these have different qualities as well. So we've got the C major seventh chord, we've got the C minor seventh chord, we've got the C dominant seventh chord. Those are all the chords we're going to use in this etude. I think that's plenty to work with. There are many, many more seventh chord types that we won't cover. So if you're interested in following that, I'm sure there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube from various musicians. So here's the C major seventh chord sound. Faster, it sounds like this. Here's the C minor seventh chord sound. And probably most familiar to us is the C dominant seventh chord. This is a chord that classical Baroque players, Renaissance players will have used amply. And our ears are trained to go to there after we hear that. So there are some functional harmony bits in there. And oops, there we go. Sorry about that. These will go into how to kind of label if the chords have been inverted, just like before. So we've got the bass is our E here, but it's still a C major seventh chord. So this is just sort of a little bit of a key, a little bit of a map for how to do that, approach that. This next section is the workbook section. Label the chords and their members. Draw. There we go. So what you can do is label these chords. So for example, C, that's already a C major chord. We can do root. Imagine doing this with a pencil. That would be a lot easier. Root, we've got G is the 5th in a C major chord. Oh, this is harder than I thought it would be. There we go. And the 3rd is way up here. There we go. So you can label that, and then you can label these chords too. So what chord does a G, E, and a C make? Well, it still makes a C major chord, so we might write C there. But C is not in the bass, so we might do a slash, and we might say G is in the bass. Boom. There's our label for that. And it goes on and on. So you can take however much time you want to label those. That might be really good practice. And here, I'm going to zoom out again to get back to our normal width. Here we have our first sort of finding harmony play along. So I'll just go ahead and play that harmony one. These also exist in the practice tempos playlist. That can be useful. Essentially, it's just a very long loop of this chord progression right here. With a little count in. A minor, F major, B flat major 7, G7, C major 7, A7, and D. First thing I would do is just play roots. Follow the instructions on the page as they are given here. Arpeggiate the chords on your instrument. So basically, we're taking these chords and we're knocking them over into essentially an arpeggio. You can do, down to up. You can do up to down. You can go up and down. You can change the rhythm. That part is up to you. As long as you're exploring the contents of the chord in time with the play along, you will learn a lot about how these chords sound. After that, play horizontal lines. So this is the part where it links what the chord is made of to how we're used to playing melodies as string players. So I'm going to demo this line here. This is a horizontal line. All these notes are taken from here. You can think of this basically a line. I just mean a melody. So we're going to play this line, this melody, with these chords. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. We're in the practice tempo zone right now. So let's go back to the regular play alongs. And I will do the harmony 1 in tempo. So here's the bottom line of that exercise. I'll do it one more time. There's other lines. So how am I picking those notes from the lines? Well, I'm sort of, if I started on F, I'm thinking, well, what's the sort of closest to note in this chord to that F? And it's E. I only have to move down 1 half step. That creates smooth voice leading, which is often really pleasant to listen to. From E, there's a common tone. So I don't have to change, I can stay on it. If I stay on it, it'll increase tension. If I get off it, it won't increase tension. That's a choice you can make. Do you want to increase the tension or not? From E to the next chord, I decided to go to D. It's the closest note. So if you're starting on the top line, probably you're going to stick to the top line. But there are places where you can switch into other lines as well. If you're in a middle member of the chord, then you might go up, you might go down. It's up to you. So that's just an exploration. Lastly, number 2, finding harmony 2. There is the complete sound to this in this play along here, finding harmony 2. However, some of the information is missing. So it's sort of your job to fill it in. Here's an E7 chord, F major 7. What is that chord? What's that chord? G7. So in the cases where you've got the chord name written, but no notes, your job is to fill in the notes. And it doesn't really have to match up with the play along. It can if you want, meaning exactly the order of notes doesn't matter so much. But if you want to get into voice leading, then, you know, for example, the first chord, C major, we have our C and our C. That means we're still missing E and G. Where are we going to put E and G in this chord so that we have smooth voice leading to the next chord? And what is this chord? Well, you have to figure out what the root is, and you have to figure out what the other members are. Can you turn it into a three-part chord that looks like a snow person, a snowman, a snow woman, just the three notes stacked like that? Because remember, in Western harmony, we make chords stacked in thirds. Maybe there's too many, maybe there's 4 notes, in which case it could look something like that, a 4-segmented snow person. I've never seen one in real life, but they exist in music. And then the E7, we know again what kind of chord it is, but we only have the note D in this chord. What are the other notes that we need to fill in? And then there's a section for composing. You can actually write in your own chord progressions. It's less scary and less difficult than it sounds. The way I would recommend doing it is picking basically random notes from C to G in our musical alphabet, writing those out. So let's say, I'm not going to write it out, but let's say B, D, C, G, A, and F. That's our chord progression. We can then assign qualities. B minor or major, up to you. You assign qualities to each of those. And then, do you want any of them to be 7th chords? You can just decide to add a 7th, totally fine. And then you fill in the notes, and you've just composed a whole chord progression. You don't have to know how it will sound. You don't have to know if it'll sound good or not. You don't even have to like it. The whole experience here is that you're just learning about what all these chords are made of, how to write them on the staff, and then playing them to discover how they actually sound. So this was a long one. 6.3 is, Etude 6, Training Grounds, is a deep dive into harmony, meter, and scales. And in the story, your mentor, Arlith Rose, basically tells you, you're not strong enough yet, kid. You got to train. So this is a good place to always come back, revisit some of these fundamentals, some of these basics. So let's get out of this view. Thanks for watching this one. If you have any questions on any of this material, you can always email me at nick@nickravel.com. We've also got Zoom cafes coming, so you can check in at nickravel.com/hero levels. There's a little registration. I'll update that semi-regularly, and we can interact in person. You can ask me questions, whatever you want to do. So, hope this was helpful. Good luck, hero.